Tzadik Tes Amud Beis 99b. We're about a third from the bottom of the page. If you look at the last word on the line, it's Vireb, and the word before that is Rav, and then there's the colon and Apikoros. There's two sets of colons, and in between it says Apikoros. So look at the end of the line, it'll be easier to find it. You see it? The word Apikoros, the third to last word on the line, about a third up from the bottom of the page, in between two colons. You have it there?
Roughly 11 is right here.
Yeah, you got it? Okay. Yeah, so the Gemara is going back to the Mishnah, which listed various different people or ways of thinking and ways of living that would exclude oneself from being within the camp. The Mishnah's term is Ein Lechelek Lam Haba, doesn't have a share in the world to come. We already discussed what exactly the world to come means, but he has no share in the world to come, which is basically a way of saying that the person has put himself outside the camp of Jewry. Not that he's not a Jew anymore, but philosophically speaking, and in a very deep ways, disconnect himself from being a Jew. And as of course, we have to make these caveats every time, but as we said here a number of times, that this applies to one who grew up within the community, understands, appreciates, and nonetheless leaves. Someone like today, we have many Rabbanim who have already agreed that today's Western Jewish civilization are in the category of Tinnik Shenishba. Tinnik Shenishba literally means a child who is in captivity. That is to say, it's a halachic term for someone who grew up outside of Judaism and therefore is not to be blamed for the lack of understanding and knowledge and behavior within Judaism. So that applies to basically everybody today. The Rabbi said this, and others said this, many have said this. But at any rate, the halachic definition of what it means to be, in other words, let's look at it on the positive side, not as to one who becomes an apikoros, takes himself out of the camp of Jews, but rather let's look at it as the parameters of what we have to keep ourselves inside of to remain within the camp of Jews. Let's use it in the positive sense. Then, right? Every negative definition tells you what's on the inside also, right? So by saying these are the lines that a person shouldn't cross, we're giving ourselves positive instruction of where we should be, as opposed to talking about those apikoros out there, which either does apply to them or doesn't apply to them, and consult with the local Orthodox rabbis. Okay. So what's the definition of an apikoros? Apikoros is generally used, translated as the word heretic, something along the lines, but the Mishnah itself gave a few, I don't have the Mishnah in this packet, but the Mishnah itself gave two different described two different people. One is apikoros, this heretic, and the other is hamagala pana b'Torah shlek halacha, one who reveals Torah in such a way that it's counter to halacha, manipulates Torah for his own purposes, as opposed to following the rules by which Torah is supposed to be interpreted and understood. So whatever definition you're going to give to apikoros, whatever definition you're going to give to a heretic, has to be different from the definition of megala pana b'Torah shlek halacha, the one who reveals an element of Torah against halacha. And that's what the Gemara is going to be doing now. It's going to bring a definition to apikoros, and then juxtapose that with your definition of the one who reveals Torah or interprets Torah in an incorrect way. And likewise the reverse. One who interprets Torah in an incorrect way, we have to juxtapose that to get your definition of apikoros, because you need to come with two different definitions, because the Mishnah gave two different titles. That's going to be the exercise we're going to go through presently. So let's see. Apikoros, says the Gemara. Rav v'Rav Chanina, Rav and Rav Chanina, Amri Tavayu, both of them said, this apikoros, what's the definition of an apikoros? Is hamavaza Talmud Chacham, one who denigrates a scholar. So we could look at this in the individualized sense, in that he denigrates specifically one specific stage. Even if he goes to one specific scholar or leader of the Jewish people and denigrates that one person, that in and of itself, I think, would qualify for this. In that, by denigrating the local scholar, local rabbi, he undermines the religious foundation of the community. The community relies on, for better or for worse, they rely on the local scholar to know what and how to do. And by him, certainly publicly, even if not, but denigrates the scholar, he's undermining the religious authority of the community. This is not to say that the rabbi himself has carte blanche. Doesn't. The rabbi himself is, in certain ways, even more subject or subservient to the law than those to whom he is telling the law. Number one. Number two, there is no bar to entry. Should anybody decide to become smart enough to become a Talmud Chacham, is welcome to do so.
Sure.
Right? Now, with anybody who has an opinion that's valid in Torah, like using today's model, where opinions are shared in Torah journals and whatnot. So if you read a response from some rabbi today who came up with a law on a certain issue, and you felt that he misunderstood a certain passage in the Talmud, make your case, publish it, and see if people will take it. So it's not like there's a closed, like in the secular world, unless you have letters after your name, you can write papers from today till tomorrow. It's not going to mean anything. In Torah world, it doesn't exist that way. If you make an argument, the argument stands, and we'll have to take it into consideration. You're likely to receive counter arguments, and you'll have to defend your position. But if you can defend your position and you can convince enough people that your position is correct, people will join you. There's no bar to entry. But at the same time, those who themselves are representative of teaching Torah, in of themselves, need to be respected, because otherwise you're undermining the structure of the Jewish community. That's on the micro sense. On the macro sense, it could be just as we'll see soon, it's brought into an attitude generally towards sages. Oh, those rabbis. That kind of attitude, as we'll see, it's going to be brought into. Okay, so Rav and Nachman say, what's the definition of Apikoros? One who denigrates the scholars, one who denigrates those who are responsible for teaching and upholding Torah. That's one view. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Levi, Amri, they say, this is very interesting, not the one who denigrates a scholar. This is one who embarrasses his friend before a scholar. In the presence of a scholar, he denigrates his friend. So here's a community that's right. Here's a community leader, and he looks after his flock, and here you go and embarrass a friend or denigrate him. And now you've tarnished the way in which this scholar views that community member. He's supposed to view every member of his community in a positive way, in a supportive way, and here you are, and you've ruined his. So you've ruined this person's position in the whole community, because now the leader looks at him negatively because of what you've done.
How does that make you a heretic?
Isn't that amazing?
But how does that make you a heretic? That's
their definition. It's pretty crazy. The definition of the word apikoros, which generally translated as heretic, they're not talking about. They say it's not a heretic. Apikoros is one who ruins somebody else's position in the Jewish community. And the worst way you can do that is by embarrassing him in front of the local scholar, in front of the local sage. It's pretty amazing how far they take it. So now says the Gemara. Now we have two definitions of the word apikoros. Now let's juxtapose that against how you define the other statement in the Mishnah, Hamagala Panim B'Torah Shlak Halacha, one who reveals an element of Torah anti-halacha. Let's compare. So says the Gemara. All is well if we take the second definition. Now, what's the definition of an apikoros? Is one who embarrasses his friend in the presence of a scholar. Then apikoros. What's the definition of an apikoros? Apikoros hava. That's the one who is an apikoros. Then mevazat Talmud Chacham atzmai, one who actually denigrates the scholar himself. He would be megalapam b'Torah shlak halacha. He would be one who's revealing in Torah an element anti-halacha. So let's see like this. We have two different types of people going on here, and we have two different definitions. One person is who denigrates another friend in front of the scholar, and we have another person who is denigrating the scholar himself. So if I say that the definition of an apikoros is one who denigrates his friend in front of the scholar, then one who denigrates the scholar himself, what category would he be in? He would be in the category of one who manipulates Torah anti-halacha. Because by denigrating the scholar, he's ruining the scholar's capacity to delineate halacha. So then I have two different people matching two different definitions. All is well. But one who says that what's the definition of apikoros is one who denigrates the actual scholar. So says the Gemara, Megala Ponim B'Torah Kagoin Mai. So one who takes Torah and ruins its halachic application, who would he be? Seemingly, the one who denigrates scholar fits into both categories. According to you, if you say that the word apikoros is talking about someone who denigrates a scholar, then one who denigrates a scholar would also fit into the other category of the one who takes Torah and ruins its halachic application. So you'll have one person, but they fit to both definitions. And seemingly the Mishnah is giving two different definitions. So what's the other? So if the Epicurus is the one who denigrates the scholar itself, what would be somebody who uses Torah against halacha? Seemingly that's the same thing as the person who denigrates the scholar himself. So says the Gemara Kagoin Mai. Who is this like? Following with me the question here? Says the Gemara Kagoin, this would be like Menashe ben Chizkiah. Like Menashe ben Chizkiah. We mentioned Menashe ben Chizkiah before, the king Menashe, son of Chizkiah, who took Torah itself and belittled it by saying that it's useless and it has no application. So, so then the two definitions would be, the Epicurus is one who's not a scholar himself, but denigrates the system. The one who reveals an element of Torah against halacha is a scholar, and from within denigrates the system, like Menashe ben Chizkiah, who knows Torah and says it's useless. So whereas the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi, they define both Epicurus and Hamagal upon the Perek Chelek halacha, and the one who uses Torah and manipulates against halacha as both the people who are not involved in Torah. Anybody. One is denigrating the scholar himself, and one is making fun of somebody else in front of the scholar. But that could be anybody. Whereas the other view says, no, one's talking about everybody. Anybody who denigrates the Torah system, whether he's a scholar or not a scholar, that's Epicurus. And then the other category, the one who reveals elements of Torah against halacha, is specifically a scholar who's capable of studying Torah, but says the Torah is of waste, God forbid, like Menashe ben Chizkiah. So those are two different ways of defining these two different camps. The really only difference would be, the practical application difference would be, somebody who belittles a friend in front of a scholar. Is he in that category? According to one view, yes, he's an Epicurus. According to the other view, no. The lower standard, the Epicurus, is only someone who denigrates a scholar. But denigrating a friend in front of a scholar, terrible maybe, but not a heretic. Whereas the other view would say, yes, that would be considered, that's enough to be considered in the camp of a heretic, but just by making fun of somebody else in front of the scholar. It's a pretty amazing thing. Okay, now the Gemara is going to do the exact same thing, but in reverse, starting from the second definition and then comparing it to the first definition. Here we started off with defining Epicurus and compared it to the definition of one who uses Torah and manipulates it against halacha. Now the Gemara is going to start the other way. Start with a definition on the one who reveals Torah in an incorrect way, and then juxtapose that to the Epicurus. So it's starting from definition number 2 and comparing it to number 1, but it's the exact same exercise in the reverse. So it says the Gemara like this: those who learned this entire little exercise we just did, instead of reading it on the first half of the Mishnah, they read it on the second half of the Mishnah and then compare it to the first. How so? The Mishnah says Megal upon Torah. The Mishnah says that one of the categories of a heretic, or one of the categories of someone who loses his share in the world to come, is one who reveals an element of Torah that's anti-halacha. So, let's start with that definition. Rav and Rav Chanina say, this is referring to one who denigrates a scholar. By denigrating a scholar, he's undermining the system of Torah and thus revealing Torah in a bad way. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Lakish say, revealing Torah in an incorrect way is by making fun of a friend in front of the scholar. How's that? Because here Torah is supposed to bring peace and harmony to the community, and here he's taking the very symbol of Torah, the scholar, and ruining the community by making fun of somebody. So he's not literally manipulating Torah against halacha, but he's using the system of Torah against itself. Torah is supposed to be to uphold the community, keep friendships, keep peace. As we mentioned before, that Torah brings peace, and here he is ruining the community in the face of, or using the power of Torah, this scholar, to denigrate a friend. So that's the definition of the second statement in the Mishnah. Now let's juxtapose that to the first one, to Epicurus. So says the Gemara, it's the reverse exercise as before. According to the one who says that the one who denigrates the scholar himself, that is the definition of somebody who reveals an element of Torah incorrectly. Then the one who makes fun of his friend in front of the scholar, he would be the first definition Epicurus. Hava. But the one who says that was the definition of one who uses Torah in the bad and negative way, is that he made fun of his friend in the presence of a scholar, then he's already put the second definition at the lowest denominator, at the lowest bar which is making fun of a friend in front of the scholar, apikoris kegoin mai, then what's the definition of apikoris? You've already gone to the lowest common denominator. You've already gone to the point where the one who reveals Torah in a negative way is someone who makes fun of a friend. Then what's apikoris? So says the Gemara, kegoin man laku. Says the Gemara, Amra Veshe says, kegoin hani da amri. We're taking it to a much broader sense. Not that he makes fun of a specific scholar, which we've been talking about till now, but someone who goes much broader. The Amri, Maya Hanal Rabbanon. What are these sages useful for? They learn for themselves, they study for themselves. So he's not even saying that Torah is negative, like other people before, in the previous stages. He's just saying that the scholars themselves are useless people. All they do is learn Torah all day for themselves, and they don't help us, they don't do anything for us. So there's two ways to look at this. First of all, there is on the receiving end, meaning on the end of the public, to remember to speak of scholars speak of leaders and rabbis and scholars in a respectful manner. But on the other hand, it's also a lesson to the rabbi. Don't be such a rabbi that you put your community in a position where they're willing to say that you don't do anything. Meaning to say, Rabbi, we mentioned in yesterday's Gemara that talking about the importance of making sure to teach Torah. If you teach Torah, it's as if you have a hand in that person's merit and all the rest of it. But if you're the kind of rabbi, like a tzaddik in pelt, like a tzaddik wearing a fur coat, who doesn't engage and teach, then you're putting your entire community at risk of becoming heretics. You're giving them reason to say this about you. Don't do that. I could even go so far as to say, this is not a halachic statement I'm about to make, but it's kind of a broadened statement. Right? We have the mitzvah, we have a sin, that one shouldn't put a stumbling block before the blind. And it actually says, give him a good advice, not literally a stomach block, but rather advice. Someone who doesn't understand the market, let's say, and you tell him, invest in that fund or in that market, and he has no idea. He's trusting you that you know the market better than he does, and he puts the money in there and loses everything. That would be the definition of the sin. But more broadly speaking, it's been taken to understand that you shouldn't set people up in a position where they are likely to sin, either because of their ignorance or because of whatever. So if the definition of a heretic in this understanding is someone who looks at scholars and say, you guys are useless, you're not teaching Torah, if you are such a scholar who sits around, studies all day and doesn't teach Torah, maybe not halachically, but in the broad definition, you're putting people in a position to actually do this, to become heretics. And somewhat, I think the scholar himself would carry some of the blame, in my view at least. Yeah.
Switching the onus.
I think it goes both ways. I'd say, first of all, in other words, somebody else's obligation to do something doesn't obstigate, that's the word? Doesn't relieve you of your obligation, but there's a word for it. Relieve someone else not doing their obligation doesn't get me off the hook. So in other words, just because there's a scholar who's not behaving correctly doesn't mean that I have to stop treating him with proper respect. Of course, if he does something outrageous and loses his position, loses his status as a scholar or something else. But a scholar is a true and good scholar, but doesn't teach or doesn't do it exactly the way you like it, okay, you still have to respect. But on the other hand, the scholar himself has to make sure he doesn't put himself in a position where he's not deserving of the respect that they're supposed to be giving him. Because I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's tricky. Because like you often tell the story of when you were in yeshiva about that chassid who just didn't do anything. He didn't teach anything. He just was an example.
Oh yeah, Michal Alter.
Yeah, there so other the boys could observe how a person.
When he was older, that was his retired stage.
Yeah. So someone who didn't know would come in and say, "Look, what does he do? He's not teaching. He's not doing anything. He's not." Right. But he's doing. He really is, even by doing.
That's true.
Just by being an example.
That's true. It's also true in understanding that the inner workings of the community, sometimes there are elements of the community that require someone doing this and someone else doing that.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah. Okay, so says the Gemara like this. Amalei Abaye said to Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef said the definition of an apikoros is someone who says, these rabbis, what a waste of time, all they do is study for themselves, they don't provide for anybody else. And this, I think, is to your point. Abaye says, Haim Begalapanim B'Torah. Namyu. This person who says, oh, those rabbis are wasting time, all they do is study for themselves, he's also someone who's revealing in Torah misunderstanding. Why? Because the Pasuk says, the verse says, if not for my covenant, day and night and heaven and earth would be a waste of time. In other words, all of the world is sustained by those who study Torah, which means even if there's a scholar who's studying for himself, not teaching, he also adds value to the world. So Abaye is saying, this is not a heretic because he's undermining the system of Torah. No. This is not a heretic because he's denying the usefulness of Torah. This is someone who's actually revealing Torah in the wrong way because he's misunderstanding what Torah is all about. So to your point, even if the guy doesn't teach, in and of itself, he contributes. And Omer Rav Nachman says, Mahacha, another verse which indicates the same thing, that someone who studies Torah, even if doesn't teach, contributes to the world around him. First of all, this verse which says that God says, if not for Torah, there's no reason for this world to go, so this person sustains the world in that way. And another verse which implies the same thing, from the following verse we can derive the same thing. As the verse reads, it's actually in this week's Parsha, it's yesterday's Chumash. Where Rabbi is negotiating with God to save Sodom, and God says, yep, if you found 10 scholars, I would save the whole community. Implying that just the fact that there's a scholar around is already enough to bring blessing to that community. So someone who says that the scholar studies for himself, even if it's true, it's not apikoros, but rather he reveals Torah in a wrong way. So now the question becomes, if he's in the category of one who reveals Torah in a wrong way, what's the definition of apikoros? We have to give another definition. So Ella, rather Abaye says, Kagoin, this is amazing. For example, to Yosef Kamei Rabbi, he's sitting in the presence of a teacher, and they're learning. And while he's learning, a piece of information pops into his head from something else he learned. And he says, to show off his own understanding, he wants to show off to his teacher how much he knows. And he says, oh, Haki Amin and Asam, this is what they say in that case. Showing off because something just popped into his head. What's wrong? What should have he said? Says the Gemara, the problem is he didn't say, Haki Omar Mar, this is what you taught us. And the truth is, even if he didn't hear it from that scholar, but because this is someone who teaches him Torah, so even when, let's put it this way, Abaye is saying that Apikoros is the one who studies Torah from his teacher without giving his teacher credit. Put it in that way. That's amazing.
Yeah, like it says in the Pirkei Avos.
That's right. Someone who
to quote something in the name of its author. Right. Right.
Always
press that I learned elsewhere. I don't remember who I learned it from, or I learned it from.
Yeah.
So not just like, I have a novel idea that I just came up with. It's not. It's
Here's even more. Even if the teacher didn't tell it to you.
Plagiarism.
Even if the teacher didn't tell it to you. This is halach actually in Kibbud Av V'Em as well. That if a son wants to correct his father, he should say, I think you once told me X, Y, and Z, and thus giving his father credit for the correction that he is making. And that's what Rabbi is saying to do here with teachers as well. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop here. It's 9 o'clock already. But this is very interesting. There's more on this topic, God willing, coming tomorrow. We have one more line on this page, and then we'll get to Kuf, to page 100 already. A wonderful day, everybody.